Next, we're going to have Lamat. He is going to be presenting his advisors were Dr. Kirsty Taggart and Professor Ryan Foley. Thank you.
Do you have a clicker or?
The clicker isn't working.
Yeah.
Oh, no,
No,
it
okay.
doesn't work, but you can have me do this if you want to.
No, that's all right. I'll do it. Okay, thank you for the introduction. As she said before, my name is Lamat. My collaborators are Dr. Kirsty Taggart, Professor Ryan Foley, and today we're going to be talking a little bit about the missing progenitor, which is the star before its supernovas of supernova 2021 SJT. So, stars explode, crazy stuff. Basically, what happens for a heavy mass star is that it burns heavier and heavier elements until it can't support its own weight and essentially collapses under its own gravity and explodes. And there's a lot of different types of explosions. Specifically, SJT 2021 is a type B, which means it has hydrogen helium in its spectrum. But there's also type 1As, which are accreting material until a runaway nuclear fusion reaction occurs. There's also hyperluminous supernovas like 2014C, which has been burning been bright for like, I think, 8 years. There's a lot of mysterious types of supernovae. But the issue is that in most cases, there's no before images. Very rarely is there before images. So sometimes we don't have any information to go off of except the supernova itself. So it's really important that we can find a connection between the progenitor properties and the supernova properties and see if we can make a connection or a trend or even a prediction of what the progenitor star was before its supernova. So touching on 2021 SJT again, it was a type 2B supernova detected in NGC 6951, about 82 million light years away. You can see in this cutout here that the little yellow dot in that zoomed in circle is the supernova itself, which is really cool. But basically the main goals of this project was finding out where is the progenitor, what type of star is it, what's its mass, its type, its temperature, its size. Can we find any more information about it? Can we make a connection to the supernova properties and the progenitor properties? But first, how do we go from having a picture of before and after of a supernova to finding out what type of star it is? How can we even find the star in general? So first, we have to get all the data sets from the Hubble Space Telescope, and we have to sort them between before and after. We have to sort by its instrument, by its filter, by its date it was taking. And we have to pretty much go through DOLFOT. DOLFOT is a method of finding out potential sources of luminous sources near the supernova position. And then we can undergo astrometry, which would actually go to the subpixel method and pretty much go to the actual individual stars themselves and confirm that we have the right progenitor, because doing it by eye is way too uncertain. And then we can use photometry to find out the typical properties of that star. So you can actually see on the figure right here, which I'm going to move over, each of these red dots here, red points, are potential sources for this progenitor. And you can see right here, this green circle is the supernova position. And we basically took it and a 0.2 arc-second radius and just put it on the before image. And right here, right in the middle, there's a source number 13. So for this data set, ID 9603010, which is very iconic, and basically this is like not confirming, but there's a very good chance that's our progenitor. It's right smack dab in the middle. We have some properties of it. We have the Vega magnitude, which is the brightness, and we have the sharpness, how much of a star does it look like, the signal to noise ratio, how bright it is compared to pretty much everything else. And then after we find all that, we can plot it with stellar models to find out what kind of star it is. We can use synthetic photometry, plot orbitalmetry on there, and then find out what's the classification of the star. And then we can find out the type, the size, etc. Go over. Oh, it didn't. There we go. So what did we find out? Well, a progenitor was found. It was a late night, and I ran the DOLFOT code, found some typical positions, and I was curious, what if I took the position of the supernova in a 0.2 arc-second radius and just put it on the before image? And lo and behold, I found that source that was stayed on the previous slide, smack dab in the middle. I messaged my mentor, Kirsty, in excitement at 11:45 p.m. and then went straight to bed. So I was super excited, but we can't be too excited yet. We have to confirm. So we have to use astrometry. We used Kirsty's astrometry, which again, I'll reiterate, uses geometric transformation in the subpixel level in order to basically find a translation between the coordinates of the progenitor and the coordinates of the supernova, or in simple terms, basically where the progenitor should be compared to the supernova's position, the progenitor's location. Then we used photometry, was performed on the progenitor as well, which stayed on the previous slide, of what type of star, the magnitude and everything like that is. And then from there, we can pretty much we created a graph of synthetic photometry, which is basically a theoretical star plotted with all the filters of Hubble Space Telescope. And then we can basically use that graph, plot our points from the photometry, and then find out what kind of star it is. But that part we haven't gotten to yet. It's part of our future in this project. So the case of 2021 SJT, what was the point of looking at this supernova and this progenitor 82 million light years away? Who cares, right? Well, it's important. To reiterate, 2021 SJT is a type 2b supernova, which means it has hydrogen and helium in its spectrum. It was found, as I stated before, and we used photometry to find out what type, the brightness of the star and some of the properties, luminous properties, and we used astrometry to find out the specific star itself and confirm that progenitor star is our star. Then we created a synthetic photometry, a spectral energy distribution graph, which you can see right here, which is synthetic photometry of all the filters plotted right here. So we have all this. How do we find out what type of star it is? We are so this close to finding out the classification of the star. Basically, all we have to do is make a graph like this, but just put our photometry points of the progenitor star. And then we can fit it to the Pickles models, which is a spectrum model. It's basically a model of like all the stars and star classification, and figure out what kind of star does it line up to. And more than likely, we think it's a yellow supergiant, but we couldn't be sure until we actually did it. But it's really exciting because after we find out the properties, the mass, the type, the temperature, we can see if there's a connection to the trend. And then we can add it to a collection of found progenitor supernovae. And if we can find this trend, we can totally revolutionize supernovae science. And we can figure out a prediction of the type of the progenitor star without even ever having a before image. So we can just look at a supernova and say, we have a good prediction of what this progenitor star could be. But yeah, thank you for listening to me geek out a little bit about this supernova 82 million light years away. And I appreciate you all spending your precious time listening to me. And thank you so much.
Wonderful talk. Questions?
Yeah, that was super cool. Can you go back to the actual energy distribution talk?
I talk about the synthetic one.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm sort of curious. I don't know if you've like actually done the photometry yet, but how many like data points? Like if you were to do this with the actual photometry, how many data points do you have?
So this is just a little background. This is synthetic. So this is all the filters that of Hubble Space Telescope. So this has like, I think like 10. SJT was taken in F555W and F814W. So it'd only be 2 points. So that's why we'd have to use chi-square fitting to get like the fitting really well in order to match it to a spectral model.
Were there any questions? Oh,
Is that something we can't do before and after for all supernovae, just because we don't have enough before?
Basically, yeah. So the reason why SJT got so lucky is because people were already taking pictures of that area before for a different purpose. But luckily, we got a picture that using the Ryan snapshot program of the actual supernova itself. So we got super lucky that there's before and after. But in most cases, there's no before images. So that's why it's super important. I can find this trend. So with just after images, we can find out what type of progenitor it is. Go for it.
I don't know if this is possible, but you made that beautiful picture. Is it possible to turn the lights off just so we can see how green it is?
This one?
Yeah, exactly. Oh, that just got minimized.
oh, sorry. We'll put it back up. We were trying to get to a.
Oh, maybe you can't turn the light. Maybe you can send that around to the like Lamat,
The one
email list or something, because it's gorgeous and you made.
Yeah, all these RGB images I made using Trilogy, which is a method of making Hubble Space Telescope data into color RGB. And then I made the cutout and everything. And it's really useful to make these RGBs because they're super pretty and they pretty much motivate you to like look at pretty pictures. And like I'm gonna print a poster of it and hang it up in my room. That's how pretty it is. But, yeah, it's super cool because it's color. So this is what you would see if you had a long exposure. This yellow dot is a supernova itself. It's not a coordinate pair. It's not data on like a Python code. That's it. That's the supernova. And I think that's really cool.
there was one more question.
Oh yeah.
Matthew,
Yeah. So I was curious about the fit that you had there with the pickles thing that it says it's a G04, which is
Correct.
subgiant, not a giant or a
Yeah.
supergiant. So do you have spectra of supergiants to compare with?
Yeah, we do. This is a synthetic photometry of just this random model we pretty much picked. So we were just double checking and making this synthetic photometry to make the code pretty much work. And then what we would do is we take that code, plug in our photography points, and obviously it would be a different spectral type. And then we
Got it.
figure out-
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Dominic.